The views expressed and the opinions given by their guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Odyssey Files hosts, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
This is Susan Slaughter from Paranormal Caught on Camera, introducing you to the most epic show ever, The Odyssey Files with David Soyering and Michael O'Neill. You're welcome. Pew, 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 pew.
Oh!
Kim, what are you doing?
Well, I'm telling Mike and Dave, it's time to get on the show.
Oh, well, the Odyssey Files starts now.
Good evening, paranormal community. It is 7 o'clock Central Time, which means you are watching or listening to the Odyssey Files. I am your host, Michael O'Neill. With me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Mr. David Sawyer. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Mike. Happy Monday.
It is a good Monday. It's a warm Monday.
It was a nice Monday today. Yeah, I went out, took a long drive, and went down by the river, sat down by the river for a while, watching ducks swimming around. It was nice today. A little windy, but it was nice.
Yep. And now the rest of the week's going to suck. So,
yeah, I was going to say we got one nice day and then rain tomorrow. And then I saw temperatures falling through the floor again, back down into the 20s. Woohoo! Go Minnesota.
That's right. I told customers today that I get to gloat today and they get to gloat the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So great show in store for you guys tonight. Hour one, we are welcoming Dave Bender to the show, who is the last shaman of his tribe. And we're going to be talking to him about all sorts of beliefs and stuff and spirit and cryptids and whatnot. And then hour two, his wife, Ann Bender, is going to be joining us for a long overdue conversation, kids and the paranormal. So really excited about that. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Dave Bender. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. It is definitely Monday.
It's definitely Monday. So far, I only had, I think, like 3 different people that had a case of the Mondays today. That just didn't seem to be doing having a good day today. But thank you for coming on. I know Dave and I have talked about being able to talk to someone like you for quite a while, and to have access to that is a real joy and honor for us. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think first, why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to be where you are?
Well, I've worked I do social work by trade, so that's my day job. Probably for the last 25 years. So working with people has just been always something that I've done in some capacity or another. So it kind of lends itself naturally to this field because we spend a lot of time speaking with families and trying to figure out what's happening with them. I got started, back in 98, 99, I want to say. And I was living in Montana at the time, which I'd been there for 20 something years. Most of my family is from Montana on my mother's side, which is the native side. And when I got started, there weren't all the TV shows and the specials and things like that. So I think I happened to catch something on TV. It was a special one night, and I was like, I could do that. So I just started going out, investigating various places around Montana, people that would let me in. I would go investigate their places. And I had, just some basic equipment that I knew nothing about. I had an outside thermometer that I used, and I had a compass and just things that I just grabbed. I was like, okay, this could work. and just kind of set out not knowing what I was doing. So a friend of mine back in Montana who was he worked for the newspaper there, the local newspaper, and we used to play basketball together. And I was telling him one day about, kind of what I did, because, I didn't talk to anybody about it really. And he was interested, and he's like, let me go along with you. So he came along and wrote up my first article, and it was crazy. It was quite the learning experience. So fast forward to 2001, moved to California, and I was just trying to find, a group that I could join up with that shared the same interest. I'd found that there were a few groups locally, so I was pretty excited about that. And found one, joined up, showed up, and we basically just kind of sat around and just really talked. That's kind of all we did. We didn't really go out and investigate and do anything. So after a while, I was like, I think I'll just kind of try to do this myself. So broke off, formed my own group, and still we really didn't know what we were doing. Finally finally got traction going over time. It wasn't until Anne actually took a photo at Woodland Opera House, and she captured an apparition photo. And if you ask her, maybe later on she'll show it to you. But I was there when she took the photo, and there was two people working on the stage on the right side. It was noon. We came in through the side doors. She always has her camera out because she's always ready to take pictures of something. And she saw something coming up the aisle, and then she had captured it. And at the time, we didn't see it. We didn't recognize that that's what had happened. She had caught it and didn't say anything. Later on that night, we were reviewing everything, all the pictures, and she screamed, and I thought she was dying in the room. She's bloody murder. So I go running in there, and then she showed me the photo, and it was it's quite amazing. But as we started showing people the photo, people started right away with it was photoshopped, it was fake, it wasn't real. So our philosophy at the time when we first started was we wanted to prove to everyone that the paranormal existed. That was our main goal, which I think 99% of the groups out there, that's kind of where they start. They're trying to prove it exists, that it's there. They want to tell everybody and get them to believe. And it wasn't until that happened with that photo that we kind of changed our philosophy to where we're not trying to prove anything anymore. We're just there to capture what is there and present it to people and let them make up their own minds. So it really, that shift really helped take all the pressure off of us as a group. So now I consider it more paranormal social work, if you will. Because a lot of it, honestly, is working with the families, getting them to buy into working with you. And once you do that, you can, the rest is easy. So it's kind of where we started. And I'm like the Godfather. It's like I stop, and then they pull me back in, and then I stop, and it's like it always just keeps going, it seems like.
I got to throw some props out to you because you're the first person I've ever talked to, and I've been involved in the paranormal for over 50 years, that took an outdoor thermometer and tried to make it a functional piece of equipment to take on an investigation. And I don't mean that in a belittling way in any way, shape, or form. I think that's phenomenal that you were thinking that far outside the box and you're like, yeah, this might work, and let's go see what happens, right?
I'll take that as credit because, to be honest, it's the one where you have the long cord and you've got the probe at the end and,
Yep.
walking around.
Yeah.
But, as long as you kind of look like you know what you're doing and you take it seriously, the people really think, it's okay. He's doing something.
The compass was a good move because compasses are if there's a bad energy or a vortex or something like that in the house where you've got this real wild energy shift, you might get the compass where you get the spinning, where it can't find true north. Yeah. I've seen it happen before. I've had it happen to me a couple of times, not like you see on TV where feels like it's going to explode out of the, it doesn't spin that fast, right? But it does lose true north if you walk into an energy pocket. So,
and honestly, at that time, I really did not know what I was doing. So I was just kind of, I would go into locations and I got my camera, it's not even on, and I'm looking around and, later on I realized I have 0 hours of footage.
Oops.
Yeah,
Gotta hit
lot
that
of
red
stuff
power
in there.
button. Yeah.
But I'm amazed that when I look at where I started to where we are now, it's night and day. I mean, now it's, we have such an amazing group of people and the biggest thing for me is you have to care about other people. That's the
Right.
bottom line. I can teach you how to investigate. I can't teach you how to care about other people. And when you care about other people, that's what comes through as genuine, And like I said, they're much more open and willing to work with you. And if you're genuine and you're honestly there to help them.
Right.
So for me, I'll take that any day over any kind of evidence whatsoever if they feel better after we've left and we've gotten absolutely nothing to show for it but them feeling better.
I think a lot of times that you just acknowledging their experiences,
right,
and saying that you understand it because maybe you have been in a situation like that yourself, whether it be at your own personal residence or whether it be at a different investigation, it gives them that credibility that they're not feeling like so alone anymore.
Right.
That
They're
they're not
always saying,
lost out there by themselves.
you're going to think I'm crazy, but
Right.
We always throw out that
Right.
sentence to them because they're so afraid to make that statement initially.
Right.
And then once you do that with them and you show them that, yes, I'm here to listen. Listening is the biggest thing. If you can listen and really hear what they're going through, you can really help them work through a lot of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I've told my team tons of times. I'm like, I don't care if I get nothing on evidence, as long as we're able to provide the family or our client, it doesn't even have to be a family, just our client, with at least some sort of answer, as
Right.
whether it's natural, whether it's just understanding, anything. I'm like, I could care less about evidence, as long as, because we're not there to collect evidence, we're there to help.
Right.
And that's it. But I do have to, I want to go back really quick. And I can't believe that now, like, our two singular questions are about the equipment that you first used. but I mean, like, as you said, this is before the TV shows. Like, maybe there was a documentary or whatever that was out there. Because I'm with you. I saw Ghost Hunters and I was like, I would love to do that one of these days. And here I am. But what made you decide to, like, I get the thermometer. What made you decide to use a compass?
I honestly don't know. I grabbed whatever I could find at my house. And because the show itself, there wasn't anything really memorable about it that I said, oh, look at all this equipment because I don't even think they had stuff really. It was just, I was grabbing stuff that I was like, okay, I could use this. This might be helpful. The temperature could be, the turkey could be done. There's all kinds of stuff, But I don't know. It was just random. It was, oh, there's a compass sitting there. Let me grab that. That might be helpful. I don't know why, but I just did. And since that time, I really haven't used a lot of those things because I just haven't.
Did it ever work?
I got readings and stuff, but I really didn't understand. Like, the compass was moving. I wasn't sure why. Because like I said, it was just at that time, it was just me doing it. I was by myself. So I didn't have, at that time, there wasn't a bunch of people that were really interested, had the same interest. They thought what I did was interesting, but not to the point where they wanted to go and explore and learn. It wasn't until I came to California that I found people with a similar interest that I could join up with. I go, oh, there's more people out there that actually are interested in this, because Montana was a place at that time that, for me and my culture, it's like talking about the weather, talking about ghosts and spirits, at least within our family, because it's very family oriented. Everything that happens, it's usually centered around family. All the rituals we do are because of family or a family that's in need. So it was always natural in that sense, but finding people that had that similar interest, at least where I was, it just didn't exist. So it was, unique in that sense.
All right. Well, let's jump into that side, because I've been dying to. I've got a bunch of questions. So, um, tell me a little bit of like the differentiation between Native American beliefs of earth spirits and natural occurring spirits, and then what we're out helping families with as far as spirits. Right. I'm there's a defining line in there somewhere, is there not?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's in our tribe, because every tribe is different. I mean, we all kind of view things. Any tribe you look at, even in Montana, there's such differences as far as how we view things. But for us, we always talked about the little people, and the little people were not spirits per se, like human spirits, but non-human spirits that were little creatures that would run around and do things. They weren't necessarily malicious to other people, but a lot of times they would latch on, and that feeling you get can cause you to think, oh, it's malicious or malevolent when it's not. When I'm investigating or I'm in a place where there's activity, whether I'm investigating or not, sometimes they will latch on to me, and they take my energy, like mostly my heat. So within a matter of a few seconds, I'll end up getting ice cold, like I have the flu. I'll start shivering uncontrollably. And sometimes I'll have to have Anne get it off of me. She'll have to remove it for me. And one day I had to call her and say, can you take care of this? She did over the phone and took care of it. But for us, as far as living spirits or ghosts, if you will, they're very much still a part of our everyday world. Like I'm inundated with family members that are always around, watching, taking care of us, helping out. A lot of it's behind the scenes. Whether it be, don't take this freeway this morning because it's going to be a nasty accident. Okay, you listen to that. They're helping you out. So it's a constant helping in that sense. My uncle, who was a medicine man, who taught me a lot of the medicines and traditions that I know, after he passed, he's been a big influence as far as helping us with a lot of the investigations that we do, when to do a blessing or cleansing, giving the other members assistance or help as they need it. And sometimes messing around with Anne's dowsing rods when she's trying to do a dowsing session. So he is quite a jokester too. So, but it's always centered around family who has passed. There's always some kind of message that's, they're trying to get across. And certain people have been selected to get that. My mom is one of them, where when my family members will pass, they will oftentimes go to her. And they're trying to get some kind of message to her for her to understand. And sometimes it's overwhelming because it's a lot of information. Before that, it was my uncle, and he used to have to sleep with the lights on because they would just constantly bombard him and they would not stop. So in order for me to get any kind of break, he would sleep with the lights on, because the lights were off, everything was calm. That's when they would come bother him.
Kind of sounds like they're jerks a little bit. Waiting until he's all relaxed. Like, all right, now let's bother him.
Yep. And it's interesting because, for me, it's like it's everyday stuff. And a lot of the team members that kind of join up with our team, as they get to know us, they start to understand who Uncle Dan is and what he does. And, it becomes a little bit more normalized, if you will, as opposed to frightening or, unknown, that kind of thing.
Do you personally see your past relatives like walk into the room, or is it more of an energy sensation that you feel?
I don't see as much as I do feel.
Okay.
And it's pretty dramatic for me. Like, I can get sick, physically ill, if there's, if it's really strong, Or the biggest thing is I'll get really, really cold. Like I'll just totally get cold inside and out, to the point where it's to the point, if it's really, really strong, it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. It's like, stop, enough. And
obviously that's your signal that somebody's there.
Right.
I mean, that's your know-how that, like, hey, somebody just walked in the room that's got a lot of energy, and they're obviously coming on to me to try to pass something along.
Right.
Talking or about a past relative versus
or just be
at a
here.
location.
Yeah, or just want to be here. So
right.
I'm getting better at, because like I said, when I do the investigations, my job primarily is to just make sure everything's running smooth. So the debunker may come to me with something, whoever it is during the course of the night, they may be coming to me asking me about, logistics of whatever. So my focus is not necessarily on that side of it while we're doing it, except for when Anne starts her dousing, and then I can kind of tune in and start answering some of the questions as well. But that's my primary job is that during the night. I might talk to the families or the business owners or whoever it is, just to make sure things are running the way they should, and that they're following the timeline that I came up that I developed. I'm big on time, so like I said, it's gotten to the point now where I can tell when there's activity, and I can feel it, and then I'll ask Anne, say, okay, Anne, who's here? She'll stop and she'll be like, oh, it's so and so and so and so. And it's like, all right, can they go bother you for a little while and kind of leave me alone? And so sometimes it'll work out that way. But she's more of the seeing, hearing, communicating type person, which sometimes I would prefer over the sick and the heavy and the the extreme cold that I get.
So you're more of an empath.
Yeah.
Right, I would say, right, because you're absorbing all of that energy, which is what's making you physically ill and cold and uncomfortable and stuff like that. And I would agree with you, because to a certain extent, I'm an empath too. So I walk in, I can feel the energy in the room. If we're sitting in a room, there's nothing there, and then all of a sudden we're trying to open a line of communication, and somebody comes in, I can feel that,
right?
But I don't get it to the point where you do. I guard myself. I kind of always keep myself protected, kind of the white light mentality, and keep myself in that cone of light. And it sounds to me like you're completely open.
It depends on the circumstances too.
Situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we went to Virginia City in Nevada.
Yeah.
And as you know, that's cowboy country.
That is cowboy country.
I'm far from being a cowboy.
A lot of violence.
And as soon as we hit the city limit sign, I got physically ill. I mean, as soon as we hit that sign for Virginia City, and I was sick the whole day, the first day that we were there. And finally, Anne, kind of got them to ease up, because I was curled up in a ball at one point. And it's just so much energy. Yeah. And it's like it's that's the not so fun part of it.
Yeah.
I would rather see and hear and communicate, to be honest. But
yeah, just wave from a distance.
Right.
Hey, I see you over there playing cards. Yeah.
Have fun with that.
Have fun. Yep. Let me know if you need another whiskey or
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I try to avoid some of those areas that I know are going to be not as welcoming. Whereas we'll go to certain locations here where there's a large Native American presence spiritually, and I'm comfortable. I mean, I'm fine. Everything's good. People are experiencing things, and for me, it feels good. It's comfortable. So it's just knowing what environment you're in and handling that in that sense.
So I've been thinking, as you've been talking, how to phrase this question properly, and still don't know if I know how to do it, but I'll give it a shot. So because one of the things that Dave and I have always talked about a lot is we don't mess with like native cases, not in any sort of if we go on with, obviously, with respect, and everything. And I have an investigator on my team who practices shamanism. So we try to, make an offering. We try to show respect, to any native spirits that may be there. With your knowledge, with your history, with your bloodline, you know, do you find it hard or easy to tell the difference on which side of like kind of like your belief system that you need to work, like whether you're dealing with native spirits or whether you're dealing with normal, shouldn't even say normal, but whether like non-native spirits?
Well, it's interesting because we get a variety of religious beliefs that we end up dealing with. And a lot of it, honestly, is like you said, it's that respect factor. Like we respect whatever religious belief you have. And I've done native blessings for people that are not connected with, Native Americans at all. And it's turned out very well. A lot of it honestly comes down to that group buy-in. You have to believe in what it is that you're doing and what's being done in order for you to get any kind of benefit from it. I've known priests that have gone in and done their blessings of a home, and it's worked out very well. Everyone's buying into what they are doing because they believe in what they are doing. So their belief kind of is spread amongst everybody that's there, that's experiencing it. And they're buying in, and then you have something that does end up working within that space. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing with what I do. They have to have a sense of buy-in in order for whatever it is I'm going to do is going to be helpful or not to them. And for the most part, like I said, I think every time we've ever done anything like that, where I've done a blessing or a cleansing, it's helped. Because there is that sense of buy-in. And once there is, you can feel the difference. And we had this happen recently in a location where it was downstairs and upstairs. And the downstairs was totally different than the upstairs. The downstairs was about as negative as you could get. You could feel it. You could almost taste it. It was that strong. And I ended up doing a cleansing downstairs. And after I was done, it was like night and day. And you could feel the difference. And everyone that was there could actually feel that difference. They felt it was a tangible feeling that they could feel. And that's the part of where that belief comes in. It's so strong and ingrained in me that I think I'm able to give it out to everyone else that's there, to that point where it actually has been beneficial and helpful to others. And it doesn't really matter if it's a priest doing it or me doing it or whoever it may be. There has to be that, like I said, that level of buy-in to what we're doing for it to be successful.
Dave, how old were you when you first felt that energy, felt spirit come to you?
Probably 9 or 10 when I moved to Montana from New York. Because I went from a place where there was absolutely no feeling or sensation because I didn't have that connection with family. It wasn't until we moved to Montana, because my mom was originally born in Montana. So she had that connection early on, moved away back to New York, and my parents wanted us to grow up, around that culture. So that's when we had moved out. And right away, I mean, as soon as we moved there, that's kind of when I started to, because the more you're around it, the more we talked about it, the more we accepted it, it became commonplace for us. And it was, like I said, just talking about the weather. So you become immersed in that environment, and it's normal. All the ceremonies we would do always tied into some kind of spiritual help for someone. For example, we have what's called the giveaway dance. And we do a giveaway dance when there's a family member that is sick. And a bunch of us will come together, and we bring food, we bring gifts, and there's dancing, and we give things away to each other. And it's that collective energy that is helps to heal. And then there's actually a backward spirit that comes in, and they help bless and cleanse the person that needs that help. It's one of those things that it's hard to explain, but it's just like a collective effort in that sense. It's a lot like going to a Sundance. I mean, that's about as religious for us as you can get. And the experience that you have with that, it's hard to put into words.
Well, we both, Mike and I think I speak for Mike on this, is we both feel that collective energy is a legitimate thing. Mm-hmm. And that if you can get together with a group of people that are like-minded, that are like what you just said, there for a very specific reason to help somebody who's sick, and everybody is focused on that positive energy that's being released is a healing energy. And that healing energy is going to be beneficial to some extent. To what extent, it's not measurable, I don't think.
Right.
But to some extent, I think it's always going to work. It's the same thing when we watch CE5, and Mike and I watch CE5 together, and the whole thing of collective consciousness and global consciousness reaching out to alien life, and everybody you got 750,000 people all with the same one thought, all trying to make contact simultaneously. I think that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I think that once that evolves a little bit, I think that's going to be a very powerful thing maybe in my lifetime, that maybe we will communicate with alien life, and maybe the first ship will land and decloak, or however you want to put it,
Do they want to come here though?
Well, I think, like we've talked about this hundreds of times on the show, is I think they're observers for right now, for whatever reason. I think they're observing our societies and how we act as a society. I'm sure they're appalled right now with what's happening in the Ukraine and Russia. Yeah. I'm sure that they're just probably like shaking their heads.
What's wrong with these people?
They're so, I got to think that they're so far evolved from us that when they witness something like that, they're just like, we had such high hopes for you guys this year. You're just coming off of COVID. You're just coming off of COVID. The whole world kind of.
This was supposed to be the year.
This was supposed to be the year of love and everybody,
maybe next year,
rebirthing and growing spiritually and mentally and emotionally. And
at some point, they're just going to say, screw it, go somewhere else.
Probably. I don't doubt that's already happened. I don't doubt that there's been a species that has been here, observed us, and been like, those guguys are a lost cause. We'll come back in 100 years and see where the hell they're at.
Yeah,
take
see
a
what we got to work
with. See what we could do to help them. Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm done. That was my thought.
It's Monday, so I sometimes I ramble stuff that's not even related. So it's I've been up since 4:30.
I'm just after that for me too. So I'm right there with you. So since Dave brought this up, and I wasn't at all planning on asking this question, but like I said, since he brought it up, this was brought up to us, and it's been kind of a recurring thought in my head. And with you being an investigator and going on all these cases and whatnot, the question has kind of been posed of, maybe a lot of investigations, when you feel like you're dealing with spirits, you're not. What you're dealing with are, in fact, aliens. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had any cases where you went in there thinking that it was a spirit, for sure, but with whatever evidence, whatever personal experiences you got, maybe you were leaning more towards something like that happening as opposed to a supernatural haunting?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened a few times where you have something and it's not spirit per se, but you can't quite put your finger on it because it's not familiar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, we know this is not your typical haunting type of thing, but there is something here that we haven't really experienced. So you don't really know what it is, and it's like, well, we're not really sure. But
is that like a weird energy signature for you?
Yeah,
is that how you read it?
It's
Yeah,
different, and
it's you walk in and you're like,
and I'm not good. I'm not. I don't practice enough because of my function during the investigation to be able to differentiate, if that makes sense at times. Just because that's not where my focus is. My focus is on everybody else and making sure things are getting done. Oh, you got to come here and feel this. Okay, fine, I'll feel this. Yes, it feels weird. Where are we at in the timeline? What's going on with the family? A lot of times it's spending a lot of time with them, just talking. And trying to normalize some of this for them so that they're not as scared, especially with little kids.
Oh yeah.
Those are probably the most important investigations that we do. Is anytime it's involving children, those are the ones I will. Businesses, I'm like, there's not really that sense of urgency. So I'll go because it's kind of fun. But families are important. But anytime there's kids involved, I will drop everything and do those no matter what.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all on the same page there. So
yeah, and they need to listen to the kids more because the kids really know what's going on. They might not be able to tell you, but just watch the kids and the pets. The kids and the pets will tell you everything that you need to know.
I've been preaching that for over 25 years to pay attention to the children in the house and to stop telling them it's nothing and go back to bed.
Well, that's what we're taught to believe. And that's why as grown-ups, that's our first thought. I didn't see that. It's just my imagination because that's what we're taught to believe. Kids don't have those filters built in yet, at least not over time.
Right.
And we never wanted to do that with our daughter.
I thank God that my dad never did that to me. Because what I grew up in and the house I grew up in and the experiences I had, my dad never once said, go back to bed. It's just your imagination or go back or whatever. There were times where I was so scared I wouldn't even get out of my bed because the closet door would open. The footsteps would come running under my bed. It would start giggling and laughing and pushing on my mattress from underneath. And I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm going to get killed, And I'm like 4, 5, 6 years old. So I'm calling my dad's name every single time I reached out to him. Every single time. He got up out of bed, grabbed his flashlight, came in my room. We did the whole look around, Of course, it was never there in a capacity where we could see it.
Yeah.
But it was there, and we both knew it, and we both felt it.
And that's powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, he never once. That was a big deal for me, my life would be totally different if he had not done that for me. My mom was the one who was like, just go to sleep. But my dad was always the, let's see what's going on. He's passed years ago, but he could not have been a better father in that capacity ever. It was phenomenal.
And that's the support that you need. And that's why for us, it's so easy because all of my family, growing up in Montana, it's like, that's all we talked about. It was very commonplace. Family members would come and let you know they were about to pass too. My grandmother and her, my step grandfather at the time, they were coming back home from the reservation. It was late. They went to bed. They heard somebody downstairs in the kitchen, like they were cooking something. They heard pots and, drawers opening and closing and all that. And they thought it was, her cousin had come back to stay. She said, go ahead, cook whatever you want. We're going to bed. They got a phone call the next morning saying that they had, passed away on the way back from the reservation. So, they're still making themselves at home.
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out how to get my relatives to pay rent that have passed. If they leave money, hey, everything's good,
Yeah.
But hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
All they have is advice.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's worth rent.
That is, I was going to say, yeah. Don't get on the freeway because there's going to be a bad accident. That is definitely worth a month's rent.
And that's what's funny is that every time Anne says something to me, whether it be like that, I always listen every single time because she's always right. And I'll never be one of those people that'll, poo-poo it and say, no, I'd never, I would. Anytime she tells me, don't go on the freeway, don't do this, I'm like, okay, she knows what she's talking about. So at least I listen half the time, so that's good. When it counts.
Right.
Exactly, and that's what's important.
Right.
So I want to get in, since we only have about 20 minutes left with you before we bring on Anne. And I know Dave really wants to talk about this, and I'm interested in it too. And you mentioned it a little, at least the segue to it. You kind of mentioned it originally about the little creatures that used to, that you would see walk around, or no, that sounded to me like a puck wedgie. And I don't know if that's what you guys call them, or if no.
We just call them little people.
Oh, well, that works.
It works.
They weren't really people, though,
Right.
Not in that sense, but yeah.
So I mean, when it comes to not so much spirit, but like mythological cryptids, I know we've mentioned like the wendigo and the skinwalker. What does your tribe, when it comes to like them, what are their beliefs with those beings?
Not so much the wendigo, but the skinwalkers. Usually very more of your quote unquote evil spirits that can, would change shape to try to fool you or deceive you. Like at night, you're out, you see, somebody you recognize, you go up, and then something would happen.
Turn into a wolf or an
right.
owl or something like that.
Change into something else.
Right.
I mean, we have those stories, but as far as experiencing anything like that, no, I haven't. It's mostly they would talk a lot about the little people, and you would see them like you would see something, and it's not a cat or a dog, just from eye level, but you could never get a good look, and they never would stay there long enough for you to be able to see. And I think a lot of times those stories kind of get embellished to, keep us in line,
Right.
If you're not careful, little people are going to come. And but every once in a while, you see something and it's not, you're really not sure what it is, but it's definitely small.
Do you think that's spirit, or do you think that's possibly, and I use this term loosely, an alien?
I'm not sure. I think we also look at elementals.
Yeah.
Not spirit, but not human.
Right.
But they're just there.
So
Those are the types of things
of the
that,
earth.
right.
Is that how you guys
the
see
things
them?
that we've gone to places where there's a mine below the restaurant,
Right.
opening, and that's where they're guarding because, and would see them. Or different locations, where they're actually guarding that particular spot or location. So they're there for a specific purpose, but and that's why when I get really cold, people will misinterpret that as evil or negative, where they don't understand what's actually happening. They're taking that energy, they're attached. And it's not harming or anything like that, but that feeling that they get can be misinterpreted sometimes as negative or evil. And a lot of times too, that's what we're trying to differentiate for them, is that you might experience something that's strong. That doesn't mean it's evil or bad. It's strong. So we're trying to teach them those differences too.
Do you have any experience or knowledge, and I'm trying to segue this question here because I'm hoping you do, of like the Uinta Basin in Utah with Skinwalker Ranch?
Never been there.
Okay. Are you familiar with it at all? Like the stories behind it and stuff like that?
Very little.
Okay.
Anne probably knows more about it than I do because she definitely remembers things better than I do.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
She's the one that you can ask about this investigation or that investigation that happened like 15 years ago, and she can tell you what, I'm like, I only remember we went there. But I mean, I've heard of the Skinwalker Ranch. I just don't know that much about it. And I've known other people that have talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's something is happening there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been, when Bigelow had it, Bigelow Aerospace had it, for a decade or whatever he was there. He brought in like top professionals from all kinds of fields, things that you probably wouldn't even think would be associated with like spirit energy.
Yeah.
Or alien technology or alien energy, whatever. And he was reaching all over the place. But that place always, it fascinates me just because of the stories that have come out of there. And the biggest one is that story of the wolf when the owners first moved onto the property, when they first started noticing things, and what they called a dire wolf, that it was 5 foot tall at the back, and they were petting it before it tried to reach and pull the calf out of the pen. And so they went and got 357 Magnum and shot it 6 times at point blank range, and it never flinched.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's no way else to call it.
No, right? And then they go in the house and they get his high-powered rifle, and he shoots it twice. And the second shot, that's the first shot that blew the animal back with a concussion, where you could tell that you hit it.
Yeah.
And fur came out of it and blood, and they tracked it, and it got over the river, and the tracks went up the bank, and they just completely disappeared like it flew, like it changed shape from a dire wolf to an eagle. And It just was gone. And they were dumbfounded as to where the hell the tracks, like, how could the tracks just disappear in the soft mud? Just can't happen. And so leaves you scratching your head. When they went back to go look at the fur that came out of it, it was old. It had just happened, but it was like 20 years old. Everything was dried, and like the fur was tanned, like it had been through a tannery. How the hell does that happen?
And then your first thought is, okay, mental health, drugs, those are always the first things.
Well, right.
Think. And then when you sit and you talk to them, you go, okay, these people are fairly rational people,
Yep.
Yep. And that's some of these things that happen, like, especially with our family. I had a friend in Montana, and when my uncle was alive, we did a lot of the ceremonies, and there's a naming ceremony called a telescope. We call it a telescope. And there's an eagle and a bear spirit, and they're the ones that get to pick your name. So my Indian name is Lightning Rattle. Why? During one of the ceremonies, my uncle had an old 100-year-old deerskin rattle. Every time the eagle would pick it up, lightning would flash in it. And then once he left, it would drop, and we would sit there and we'd take that rattle and we'd pound it, we'd shake it, nothing would happen. And the friend of mine, when I first met him, I was telling him about, Native American stuff, who I was. He thought I was crazy. He was kind of like he was a cowboy kid. He had the cowboy boots, cowboy hat, guns, and all that. He slept for the first week with his gun under his bed because of, things I would tell him. And he thought I was nuts. Then he met my uncle one day. Just by chance, my uncle was there at the house. And he got hooked. And every time my uncle would show up for a visit, I would call him so we didn't have to sit there and listen to hours and hours of stories that we'd already heard. Right. He would sit transfixed for hours. And we actually invited him to the telescope. And it is dark when it's performed. And, the songs are sung. And like I said, that rattle will be picked up and you can see it flying around. in the room because it's bright with lightning. And medicine's also given through it, and he remembers sitting there, and he could feel the fur of the bear that was sitting next to him. And it totally fascinated. I mean, like, he went from being totally scared to just totally open to all of it. He was given his own name. And like I said, ever since then, he had been hooked. And, we try to tell these stories to people, about a lot of the spirits that come in and that, we're interacting with. And to hear an eagle speak in Cree, which is our native language, it's just, you can't even describe what it sounds like, And those are the things I miss because, since he's passed, I haven't been able to do a lot of those things because I'm not in a space where we can do that. That was all done back when I was in Montana. And now I'm out here, and tribes are, quite a bit different out here than they are there. So I miss a lot of those kinds of things that we would do, those ceremonies and things. So I'm hoping one day maybe we'll be able to do that again. But, I hold on to that stuff that we were able to do and cherish that.
Well, you get to Montana, it's like 10 people per square mile, and you get to California, and it's like 10 million people per square mile. So I get a feeling that you feel a little boxed in being in California probably versus Montana.
It's weird because here, you can drive through the city and you're within 3 or 4 towns. There you have to get on the freeway before you can hit the next anything.
Right.
And it's miles. We're talking 60, 70, 80 miles between, cities.
Right.
So even the area is it's all spread out.
Are spirit animals a big part of your belief system with your tribe?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I've got a quick question for you that I want to sneak in. I had a case a couple of years ago now where the grandmother in the house saw a red fox show up, and it came from the dining room, and it was under the dining room table. It just manifested right underneath the dining room table, and then it ran into the living room, went behind her like lazy boy chair, and then disappeared. Then the daughter saw it. Then the mom saw it, and I worked with her. And so she called me and said, I need you to come over and take a look at this. And I went there and I saw it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't doing any harm. But is there any significance to, and I've never been able to find an answer for this, is there any significance to what that red fox was or why it was there? And what's the significance of a red fox?
Aside from the comedian, I don't know.
I had it described to me as like a trickster type of spirit.
Sometimes certain animals will appear as tricksters, and it depends on who you're talking to and what their beliefs are. The red fox in that instance, it might have just been there. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Did she have anything happen around it that?
Nothing negative.
Anything positive?
No, it was just kind of calm. It was just kind of a flatline situation. There wasn't any really high spikes, high or low.
Yeah, it might have just been passing through.
Yeah, I found it interesting though that I saw it because I thought, okay, like I'm gonna go and and out of the corner of my eye, I did not see it clearly like they did, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw the red fur walk from behind the lazy boy recliner underneath the coffee table, and I looked at it out of the corner of my eye and I saw the fox.
Yeah.
As soon as I turned, it wasn't there. But when I went back to my peripheral, it was there, which that happens a lot.
It almost makes you wonder, just hearing that, if it was something else that appeared to them as a fox that was comforting.
Could have been. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's once in a lot of the times what we're seeing is it's dogs or cats of, that have passed within that family that are still there. Very rarely is it anything related to like anything I'm used to. Bears, eagles. They're there a lot just to kind of help out too, when we're investigating and in areas. So I do call upon them for help. I mean, I can use all the help I can get. So
you're bringing them with you then.
Yeah.
In those instances, they're not there. Let's just say that it's a Caucasian family, right? That they're not going to have the bear and the eagle there, most likely.
Right.
But
And they're probably not going
to bring it with you. Yeah.
Right. And they're not going to see it necessarily either.
Right.
Oh, here's my cat. He's got a right. You're nosy.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. He's like, what you doing?
He's like, is there a camera? Look at, I'm famous. I'm on camera. I'm famous. Now go get me some food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's like, now let me lay down on you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's more so for me. I think it's the eagle that I draw upon. The bear has, serves a different function. But the eagle's there definitely to help. And especially if I'm doing a blessing or a cleansing, they're there to help with that. It's very interesting and hard to describe.
Yeah, I would never get it. But so I'm glad you brought up like cleansing and blessings and whatnot, because one of the things that I've talked about, especially with elementals, and whenever I have a case that might be a potential elemental, or anybody that just has a question about them, it's always you can't get rid of them, nor should you, but you can pay tribute. You can try to appease them.
Yeah.
And not even really just sticking with elementals, but any sort of spirit that your tribe believes in. To you, what is the best way of appeasing, like elementals and stuff like that, if you were to come across a case that involves them?
I think a lot of it's acknowledging that they're there and just knowing that they have their space. Because I think a lot of times it comes down to their territory and their space. They don't want it to be disturbed. But I think as long as you acknowledge it and you acknowledge the space and that they're there and that you respect that, it's usually pretty fine. I mean, it's usually okay. And I think everything we're doing has, that degree of respect, whether it be religion or, whatever it may be. I think as long as you come into it with that sense of respect and respecting their space and their beliefs and whatever it may be, that's what's going to make the difference. Even the spirits that are there want to be respected. They don't want to be talked down to or disrespected, or, you hear that a lot on TV where they're trying to antagonize or
provoke.
Provoke. And it's like, why would you do that? Everybody wants respect, whether they're alive or dead.
Yep.
I'm curious, have you ever run into an elemental that maybe it was angry because the land that it was protecting was disrespected and it had to be pacified somehow, or maybe you needed to plant new trees or something to that? Because I've seen a couple of shows, and that's what made me think of that. I've seen a few shows where like, that apple tree was like 100 years old, and you cut it down, and there's an elemental here who's really not happy that you cut that apple tree down. And so you need to plant 6 new apple trees or, something like that. Is that a legitimate thing with an elemental? Or is that just made for TV?
I don't know about the planting. I mean, I guess that could help. It depends on the situation. But I think, like I said, it comes down to a lot of it is to respecting that, okay, we're here. This is why we're here. This is what we're protecting. As long as you respect that, you leave it alone, they're fine. It's the ones that come in that are traipsing through everything and disturbing everything, disrupting, and not understanding what they're doing, not having that level of respect. It comes back to respect for most of it, because you respect the land, you respect what's there. You're going to get that. A lot of times things are going to kind of settle on their own. And that's what we're trying to get the families to understand. It's not necessarily bad or evil, but you respect what's there. You'll get that peace and that sense of calm that you're looking for. You might be able to, get along.
I know that I'm definitely in favor of coexistence. I try to do it in every case that I have. And I will 100% say that far more often than not, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Just that compromise, just that setting boundaries or whatever, so everybody can coexist peacefully, works. And
it's acknowledging that they're there, to begin with, and respecting that, because a lot of times people, for whatever reason, it's their own self-defense mechanism. They'll yell at it, they'll make fun of it, they'll crack jokes, they'll, all those things are defense mechanisms. And then once they understand, if you give that respect, it's hard to give respect to things you can't see sometimes. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with. It's like I tell them, when your child gets on your last nerve, how do you talk to them? Very sternly and firmly. You can do the same thing when you want to set your own boundaries within your own space. But it's hard when they can't see what's there, because they're doing it to something that they can't see. So we're trying to work with them on that level as well, of claiming their own space too. That's fine if you're over there. This is my space over here, and setting those boundaries and parameters.
That's where we're really valuable, because we have hundreds of hours of sitting in the dark, talking to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, watching that chair.
Right. And so we understand that, I have tens of thousands of hours of sitting in the dark, talking to absolutely nothing. And so, so when I'm with a client, it's very easy for me to talk to them and tell them the exact same thing you just said, is that you need to have that respect, and you need to take your space. And I've said that forever. You need to have your space, and you need to set your boundaries. Right. And even though you can't see them, they're there listening, right? And they understand. They understand that there's boundaries and parameters. Like, you don't want them standing in your shower with you,
unless they need your rent money.
Okay.
Again, I come back to that.
Again,
go wherever you want, then. But it's true, though. I mean, you do. You have to, and it's practice. A lot of it's practice, because they're not used to doing that at all. They're used to being scared and afraid and not knowing what to do. So typically when they're contacting all of us, they're at their wit's end.
Right.
And then oftentimes they're more apt to listen, because by that time they've tried the things that they know what to do, and then they're willing to try other things.
Right. And if you figure out how to get $100 bills to start apporting out of your ceiling, please share that with us.
I'm trying. You'll be the second and third to know.
I appreciate that. I top 10. I don't even need to be second, just top 10. I'm okay with that. So if you figure it out, you let us know. That'd be fantastic.
My grandmother, when she lived in New York, she had a friend of hers, and she would go see her, and her husband had passed. And in the evenings, she would put her laundry in the washing machine, and she would turn it on, let it run for the night, right? Mm-hmm. When she would get up in the morning, the laundry would be dry and folded on top of the dryer next to the washing machine. I said, that's awesome. Why couldn't I have that? I come home, I put laundry in my washing machine, I come back in there, the lid's up. I'm like, if you could pull the lid up, you could take it out of there, put it into the dryer that's right next to it, close the dryer, turn it on. Right? But no, I don't get that.
I don't get that either. So, yeah.
Very unhelpful.
Yeah.
Well, I should probably bring on Ann now. Because I think your dinner.
You saw her ghost hand earlier, probably. It's not a ghost. It was her hand petting the cat.
Plus, I think your dinner's done now. So.
Oh, is that what I smell it. It's like it's paranormal all over the place. I just thought I was losing it.
Smell-o-vision.
Yeah.
But but Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure
Yes.
to have you on. And I don't know, are you going to be joining Anne for the second hour, or
I can if you want. We're it's quite different with the two of us. I will just leave it at that.
I can hear her in the background reaffirming everything.
Yes, it's a constant reaffirmation of everything.
All right. Well, we're going to take.
Okay, get nice pizza.
She's getting Allie's pizza.
You
Gotcha.
Try this. It's a new thing. It's delicious.
Ah, yes. The joy.
So we're going to take a quick commercial break, about a minute and a half or so.
Okay.
And then we'll be back to introduce Anne and probably you again. So,
all right. Sounds good.
All right. So we will be back here in just a couple minutes. We'll see you on the other side.
Hello, I'm Al Lagarde from Paper Route Productions, executive producer of Kindred Spirits, Paranormal State, a whole bunch of television shows. And I've worked with a lot of people on paranormal projects and met a lot of people in paranormal radio. And I want to say that Dave and Mike are two people who have a face for radio, in particular, internet radio.
Hi, everybody. This is Chip Coffey, psychic and medium. I just wanted to let you know that when you're in the mood to get weird, you need to tune in to the Odyssey Files with two of the biggest weirdos I know, David and Michael. Take my advice. It doesn't get any weirder than that.
This is Heather Taddy of Paranormal State and Alien Highway. I can't say that the Odyssey Files are out of this world, but Mike and Dave are quite abductable.
Hey, this is Dustin Perry from Ghost Hunters, and you're listening to Dave and Mike on the Odyssey Files. It's not the best show you're ever going to listen to, but it's also probably not the worst.
Hey, this is Mike Couch from Lost Limbs Foundation. Make sure you check out Mike and Dave on the Odyssey Files because they really need the listeners.
This is Michelle Belanger, author of The Dictionary of Demons. What is faster than a speeding shadow person and more fun than an anal probe? It's Mike and Dave of the Odyssey Files. Hold on to your hats and buns.
This is Andy Lynch, director of photography of Kindred Spirits. And when I'm not filming Amy and Adam at some creepy location, you can find me listening to the Odyssey Files with Dave and Mike. Or doing something else, I don't know.
Hi, it's celebrity tarot reader Ken Boggle, and you're listening to the Odyssey Files with Mike and Dave here on the Para X Network. You're going to love it or not. Either way, I'm not being paid to say this, so I could totally care less.
I don't know why, but I just found them all really funny today. Even though I've heard them like 1,000 times.
His whole, I'm not getting paid, so I don't care less.
Yeah, I still have to put in the correct one since we're not on the Parax Network anymore.
No, we are not. But I do like the Heather Taddy that we're abductible.
We're quite abductible.
We're quite abductible. I like that. That's good. That's a mainstay for the rest of our days. I'll be 78 years old. I'll be listening to that one being, yep, she had that. She hit that one right on the button.
Well, that's like what, next year?
Yeah.
Okay,
77.
Well, you look good for 77.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I feel good for 77.
So we want to bring back Dave has decided to stay on. So we are going to bring in Dave and Ann Bender. Hello, both of you. How are you?
Good.
Long time no see.
It's been so long.
It has.
That low soft.
How you've grown.
2.5 minutes.
Hey, that's an eternity in the
internet radio.
Yeah. Well, not internet radio. I was going to say the paranormal because
true.
You guys have the best commercials too. I love them. It's a show about nothing.
Right.
Well, we'll get you to do that promo after we're done.
Awesome. Yes.
It's the greatest promo about or greatest show about nothing that you will ever listen to.
What'd you do today? I went up and got to work. There's a show.
There you go.
That's pretty much every day. So, and what I did not know until Dave was talking about it because I mean, obviously we haven't had deep conversations so far, but you obviously have like mediumship abilities.
Yeah.
How does that work for you?
Well, I go around and go poof, 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 ghosts be gone. No, I'm kidding.
I wish it were that easy.
That's a new technique. I have not seen that one before.
No, I had conversations with dead people, and I've done that my whole life. So, yeah, I talk to dead people. I do it at work, but they don't know I'm talking to them, so I just talk to them in my head. So, yeah, I may run around the hospital and quietly acknowledging all the people that are leaving the ER, not living. Yeah, things like that. Take the elderly ladies back to their bodies so that they can say goodbye. So that's
How old were you when that started for you, Anne?
First memories.
First memories.
Yeah, I was probably 2 years old, and I remember seeing this particular lady in black in the farmhouse, and scared me, scared my family when I described her because they knew her as a family member and knew I hadn't met her in life. So when I described, because I see details of jewelry and clothing and distinctive facial expressions that help me understand, what that ghost or spirit is feeling or needing. And I use that to relay what messages they might have that help identify whom it is, to police to be able to find characteristics about missing people or cold cases. So that way the police can find hard evidence to solve their real living case without, saying, well, we're told to look here, or they don't need to say any of that. They found the evidence. That's all that matters. The case gets solved.
How many cases have you helped solve?
There's no way of knowing like numbers per se. Some of them end up with resolution, and other ones gets them on a right track, or at least gets them off the track they were currently on, which was not the correct one. So one way or another, I mean, there was a missing person in December. I was able to locate to the exact place and location, and she was still alive. She was not deceased, but she was in such a state that it was very similar to a spirit because she was so heavily self-medicated. And just the same when I've seen through some of the serial killers' eyes victims to see where their bodies were, I was able to see her through her eyes, and knowing the town, having been there once, knowing that particular building I was seeing wasn't a common building, I was able to actually go on Google Maps, find the location, and I knew she was going to be there at 9:15 the next morning, and she was. And they reunited her.
Was there a time when you had to speak to spirit versus telepathically speaking to spirit? You know what I mean? With like where you were verbally speaking to them versus telepathically communicating. And was that, if that was that like an evolutionary process for you, like a growing process, or were you always speaking telepathically?
The growing process was understanding as a kid, when I didn't understand my own emotions, was having the process of learning that I was feeling their feelings. I didn't understand that somebody else's feelings weren't mine. I would get these other unexplained feelings. And we have many cases like that where family members will feel angry and they don't understand where it's coming from, but it's this family member that's pissed at them and it is really just projecting that anger on that person. Or there'll be waves of sadness that they can't, or little kids, they don't understand why they're feeling that way. It's because it's not their feelings. So the words, I use that more for other people that are around, because it's a dual conversation always in my head as well as out loud. The kids that have PK and psychic abilities, they actually run the risk of not being verbal at the same time. You have to remind them, use your words, talk out loud. Dave knows he constantly still has to tell me, Anne, talk out loud. I can't hear your head.
But conversely, I can tell her what I want for dinner, and she'll
Yes.
She'll call me and tell me, okay, yes, I'll do that.
Yes.
So that part is nice. And that honestly, what she does and all the people, the biggest thing I enjoy now doing this for so long is bringing in all these people that have all these abilities and to watch where it ends up going over time. So seeing where she's at now, as opposed to when she first started, it's amazing.
I would say it kind of sounds almost like a superpower that you can just kind of think about what you want for dinner and she gets it.
It's awesome.
I need to figure that one out.
Just think it very hard and very intensely.
Well, the only other person that's here is me, and that's not going to
and you don't cook, so that doesn't make any difference. So
I do, but for me. So
right. I was being polite when I said that. So
it's kind of interesting that you guys were talking about the connection and things, because we went to an investigation and there was a little girl there. And when we showed up, she was clung to her mother. She was probably 2 or 3. Cute little girl. And, mom was apologizing. Said, I'm sorry, she's very shy around people. So like a couple minutes later, she climbs down from her mom. Now, nobody's saying anything. And all of a sudden, she walks across the room and grabs this red ball and brings it over to Anne. And then she leaves again and she grabs another toy, brings it back to Anne. This happens like 4 or 5 times. And the mom finally is watching and she's like, what is she doing? She goes, she never does that with people. They were communicating back and forth. Anne would tell her in her mind, go get me the red ball. So she'd go and get the red ball, bring it back to her. Go get me the toy truck. She'd go get the toy truck and bring it back. So, she has that connection that's almost instantaneous, it seems like, with a lot of people, especially kids, when we get to locations.
So, Anne, are you reading the people there then versus spirit that might be in the house? Or are you reading both, or how does that work?
Both. Because with kids, oftentimes I'm screening for what's called PK, which is a normal phenomenon. It's a natural phenomenon. It's not paranormal at all. And PK is basically you'll come to a kid's house, usually around the age 2. It's been going on for a while. And toys are going off when the kid is sleeping. And whether I have that information or not, that's one of my questions. I said, when the toys go off, is it the kid's favorite toys? Yes. I said, does it have to have batteries in it or not? Will it still go off? Yes. The kid is using that PK to still play with those toys while they're sleeping. Those kids, I'll scream with my questions. In my head, I'm asking them, bring me your favorite color. Bring me your favorite toy. Bring me your favorite doll if it's a girl. And once the kid has done that several times, I know I've got a kid that does have PK. So I've got that element of the activity going on. Now I have to screen for, is there anything other spirits in addition to this activity? Because a lot of times those go hand in hand. They're drawn to these kids. A lot of different names for them out there. I hate names. Some people call them indigo children, or all these other different psychic kid names. But once I know I've got that part of that element, that's really a catalyst for other activities. Just like quartz in the earth is a catalyst, or water can be a catalyst, storms overhead. So all those things are factors that you use when you're figuring out what's coming from what, when.
Do you work with those kids by chance? Yeah. Like on a continuing basis? Like if you find a kid who you can, I mean, I find it absolutely amazing that you could ask this child questions. You should have been around when I was 2 years old, because I would have loved to see where the hell we would have gone together. Okay. But that's just a personal.
And you want barbecue tonight, by the way.
I am having barbecue tonight. So, but I find it fascinating that like you could do that with a child. Do you work with those kids?
Sometimes,
because
yes.
If those children, do you think that they lose that ability when they reach a certain age, or do you think that ability just kind of goes back inward because it's forced down with repression from the parents.
It depends on their environment. Totally depends on the parents' comfort. A lot of Asian families have full belief, just like Native Americans. It's not having a conversation with your spirit ancestors is normal for them, whereas the white Americans are very scared of it typically. The UK, they're far more open to spirit activity, whereas here in the US, they're just terrified of it for the most part. As in the case was with my family, what happened with me, I went and shared for an episode of Haunted Hospitals. So I won't go into too many details there, but it'll be an episode unlike any other on their season 4.
Nice.
And it's interesting because we've done cases where, there's been kids involved and then you don't hear anything. And then years later, all of a sudden, you're reconnected. There might be something else that happens and all of a sudden you end up back. And it's interesting. It's almost like you've never really left, so it's those are the ones I think are kind of fun to go back after so much time has passed. Because a lot of them, you do what you do, they're fine, everything's good, and then you don't hear again. But it's those ones that come back that after time, and it's like, okay, what's changed? What's the same? And it's trying to piece that together and piece that out and see what's what.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I've been wanting to ask. So, you wanted to talk about, kids in the paranormal here tonight. Why is this topic so important to you?
I think there are a lot of kids out there with these abilities that are very isolated, very alone, told that they've got some other problem. Maybe they're told because what they're seeing isn't real, so they're given medication to hide, what abilities they actually are presenting, because they're so young when they present these things. They don't know what to do with them. They're called schizophrenia. They act out. They're angry because they're so isolated and alone and they've got no support. It's not to say that's the case for every child that acts out. I'm just saying some of these kids are lost in the system. They fall between the cracks. They don't fall into any classic diagnosis, but they're struggling with what's going on and nobody's listening to them. So it's these kids that I am there to help when they've got nowhere else to turn, when they're having these experiences. Maybe they're terrified every night. They're wetting their bed because they're so scared and they've got nobody to turn to or talk to, not even their own parents. That's why I'm passionate about this. I'm reaching out to those families that may hear this and go, I wonder if that's something that might be going on. And it can be either in part of or totally the problem. But it might be a factor in what's going on with their son or daughter that's really disrupting their lives. And that little one could be nonverbal, could be autistic. They're so high functioning, they're not able to express what's going on. And those are actually kids that are easy for me to talk to when they're nonverbal. I can't explain it, but I've had some of them that have spoken in full sentences that were deemed nonverbal. And they've actually spoken out loud because in my head, I'm telling them, use your words. You have these words. I'm hearing them and I'll repeat them back. And I have a way where I've actually had kids like that speak. So anything's possible. You just have to look outside that box that society drills into us. You just never know.
All right. So let's stay on autism here for a second. In your experiences, do you think that children who are autistic are possibly easy prey for something negative?
That would depend on the circumstances. They're definitely easy prey because they're so high functioning and so curious. And the more curious and the more a child is looking out there, the more bright their light shines.
Right.
Yeah, the bigger target you have on yourself.
Right. You become more of a magnet.
Yeah.
Like the moth to the flame type of mentality.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think, Dave?
A lot of, and it's true for, I think, a lot of even mental illness, mental health issues. can be more susceptible and open to things that happen. I worked in community mental health, and there was a coworker of mine who would often come to me and say, I'm not sure about this, and would present the information and want to know if is it mental health or is it paranormal. So oftentimes we would have those conversations and kind of what we're looking at. So there's definitely the ability there's that, because I think the way the brain works with those situations, they're definitely much more open because they're not here, they're here somewhere else. And more so in that state. So I think there's more of an opportunity for that to happen.
And I think if you pair that with the inability to communicate effectively,
right,
it's very difficult to ask for help or to express what's happening to you as the individual with autism and or mental health issues that is being affected potentially by something negative.
Right.
Right.
You have that inability to, they know what they want to say, they just can't get it out.
Right.
So there's that disconnect between the information they receive versus how it's coming out. So it's not coming out the way they want it to. So you do see that level of frustration sometimes, and you can see behavior. I mean, it's not uncommon to see behavior because of that inability to express themselves appropriately.
It's the same with stroke victims. When they can't speak and their speech has been affected by their stroke, I have more often than not, I will read them when I'm doing their pictures, and I watch the tears start flowing because I let them know, hey, we're here. This is what's going on. We're listening to you. I know you can't say what you're thinking right now, but we know you're thinking. We know you're right there. And I just watch the tears flow down. They know they're being heard. They can't get it out, but at least I've added that point of comfort for them. And that's something I can do. I don't have to say what I'm doing, but I can add that area of comfort that is very unique because I can speak specifically to what they're concerned about. If it's a family member that they need contacted, I can ask the nurse, hey, did you happen to call the son, or have you called the family member? I can do things cryptically enough where I don't need to tell them what I'm doing. And it's an honest question. It falls right into their care. So I'm kind of sneaky like that.
She's very sneaky.
Like a ninja. You're like the paranormal ninja.
Yeah.
So let's just say, that there are parents, I mean, I'm sure there are, that are listening or will listen here in the future, and they have children who may or may not, be developing skills. What are some things that parents can look for in their kids to kind of tell the difference between an imaginary friend and actually encountering a spirit, or whether they're being, I don't want to say manipulated because that's not the right word, but whether they're soaking in an energy, whether intentionally or unintentionally, but that's causing them to be angry, or it's causing them to be depressed, or causing them to act out. And just children who are naughty, for better terminology. But what are some of the specific things that parents can look for where they might actually be like, okay, maybe I should seek your help, or maybe somebody in their area who may be able to help them determine which way it is?
If they have a family pet, and that family pet's eyes tend to look to the same spot that the kids is, that's that cross correlation of, hey, more than one person or more than one, whether it be an animal or kid, is looking at the same thing. So it's got more than one person's attention. It's not an imaginary friend if the dog's looking at the same thing and it's consistently happening time and time again. The details. Imaginary friends tend to be very vague. They don't have specific details that spirits do or present. And gifted kids notice details. So if the parent starts talking to him, hey, tell me, what age is your friend? Does your friend have a name? What hair color? Do you know what eye color? Those are things that an imaginary friend, they haven't even thought about that. But in a spirit, they have seen it and they can tell you those answers. So details. So pets that look at the same spot or other kids, the details of that imaginary friend. Next comes actions. What type of actions is that child being told to do? That's where it gets kind of hairy. It goes along with all this stuff, but if these actions are malevolent, that's when you need to see, is there anything else that happens along with it? Are these details happening with the pets? And then now we've got actions. Are these actions naughty? Like really naughty? That's when I tend to worry about something more malevolent. But are these actions helpful? Are they picking up the toys? Are they doing things that they normally don't do, but they're suddenly helping? So it can go that way too. Especially if it's a grandparent or grandmother that's in spirit. They often are with those little ones, and especially when they're very gifted, they're going to be the most pronounced. You'll see little babies that'll crawl up and reach for somebody that they can't see on the baby monitor. They're reaching for that loved one. If it's a malevolent one, those babies are not going to reach for a grandmother. They're not going to have the same reaction. There's not that human connection and human interaction that you see with spirits versus malevolent entities.
I think I know the answer to this question already, and I'm pretty sure I already do.
You do?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do. Do you believe in old souls?
Absolutely.
Okay. Like people, like children coming back that are just phenomenally different in whatever capacity they might be different in. And
have you ever looked in a child's eyes and say, okay, that child is not 7?
Yeah. My 5-year-old daughter, my youngest daughter, Zoe, she when she was 4 and 5 years old, we would have big Christmas parties and summer barbecues. We'd have a lot of people over. And my daughter, who was 5 years old, was walking around having conversations with all of the adults instead of playing with the kids. And it was freaking out my friends because they were like, your daughter just had a more intelligent conversation than like my 17-year-old child has ever had, and that really freaked me out. And I'd be like, well, she's a special girl, she's a special kid,
Well, she's lucky she has you as a dad that can understand that and see that and support her.
Yeah.
Because you have that gift too.
Yeah,
it's not fair to compare him to a 17-year-old because, come on.
Well, right.
The conversation's not going to be all that.
Right. Understandable. Right. 17-year-old's mind is elsewhere than having a current events conversation. Yeah.
Another thing to look to is, we have to rule out the mental health stuff first because there's no way to really tease it out. It's really hard to deal with any kind of paranormal stuff, especially if whatever's there is feeding off of the fact that they've got that mental health going on that's not being treated. So we will oftentimes recommend to get, to have that ruled out by a doctor or psychiatrist first. And then kind of what's left over, then we can look at and say, okay, what's going on now? Is it all taken care of, or is there still things happening at this point?
When we make those recommendations, it'll be only that person having these experiences. There's really nothing being experienced absolutely by any other person. So it really, when it's that isolated, you have to look at those types of possibilities. It's not to say that always is, but it certainly is a red flag. And if absolutely nobody ever experiences anything else, okay, that's kind of unusual because paranormal activity, it accidentally, you run into stuff moving or shadows, you catch shadows. There's little tiny things that accidentally are seen. When it's just one person like that, we had a family where we politely turned down the request. They already knew there was a mental health component, but they wanted us out to see. And nobody else had any experience at all. It was only the one child, and the behavior was so specific to their diagnosis that we had to, politely decline the investigation, that it wouldn't do them a service. It would do them an injustice, if anything else. And just like in the medical profession, do no harm. We're not going to proceed and plant the seed of that there's ghosts there when indeed they have an issue that they need to treat medically.
So I know this is just going to be an estimation, an approximation based on, your own experiences and whatnot. But how often would you say a child is misdiagnosed? What they're you've sought out the mental issues and whatnot, and a psychologist who doesn't believe in the paranormal, doesn't believe in psychics, doesn't believe in medium, was like, well, this child obviously does not have gifts. They have schizophrenia, or they have ADHD, or they have this kind of. How often do you think a professional who doesn't believe in the paranormal or won't even be open to even discussing such a thing misdiagnoses a child, and they're and it's not a mental issue at all? They have gifts that are surfacing.
I couldn't say a percentage of the time because I'm not a physician, so I have no right to even step on that question. It's not my place. Does it happen? Yes, I believe it does happen. But as far as how much or anything beyond that, I wouldn't even be able to estimate. It's not.
That's fair.
I'll give you a percentage because I'm not a doctor. But I did work in a children's psychiatric facility for years, and I have worked in the mental health field for a number of years. And seeing both sides of it, I would be okay with saying maybe 50-50, because if you give someone medication, that will cut out what they're hearing or seeing. That's why people drink sometimes a lot. Because you know what? It will stop. They will not hear it anymore. And I experienced that myself with my own mom. Because like I said, family was always bombarding. So sometimes you would have to have something to put that filter up, because you can't close it all the time.
You got to numb it down.
Right. So I think it happens more often than not, and only because I had been consulted on a number of times when I worked in community mental health, because the clinician at least was aware enough to know, okay, this does not seem right to me. What is your thought? I'm not seeing the mental health side like I should be. What do you think? She knew I was into the paranormal, so we would often talk. And then sometimes they would look at what other treatment options could they look at, or advice that they could give that wasn't going to be seen as crazy, given the paranormal aspect of things. So I think it happens probably quite often, because you see something, you prescribe something for it, and it stops. It's like, oh, okay, it's working. When in fact, there could be a number of things going on.
That's why I like you, Dave, because you're willing to throw the numbers out there. Because we had a show a while back on sleep paralysis, and they asked, what are your thoughts on whether it's sleep paralysis or whether it's something that's paranormal that's disturbing the individual. And I threw a 50-50 number out there, and everybody laughed at me. But I'm glad to see that you and I are on the same page and not afraid to throw a reasonable number out there.
Because the worst thing that happens is I'm wrong, but who's going to be able to prove it?
Right. I felt the same way when I said it.
Exactly.
Right. Like I know there's a clinical reason for sleep paralysis. Yeah. I understand that. I know the reasons behind it, but I think that there's a lot of paranormal activity that goes unannounced. Right. I think people are too afraid to talk about it because they're too afraid of admitting that there's something that they don't understand.
Yep.
And that's where they shut that door.
Yeah.
They shut it and they lock it. Yeah.
If I can't explain it from this book,
right,
DSM,
right,
you know,
it doesn't exist.
Right.
Right.
Our most impressive cases start with the words, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but da 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 da." I actually look and listen for those words because crazy people, they don't care they're crazy.
They'll
They
tell
don't
you
care.
everything about themselves.
Oh, and things you don't want to ever hear.
Normal people, that's the worst fear that they have, is that you're going to think, uh-oh, this person's crazy. So they're not going to tell you much of anything. So right away, you already kind of have an idea where you're going.
Yep. If they think they're worried about being crazy, they're okay.
When I have a new investigator that comes on the team, and thankfully that hasn't happened in quite a while, but I'll ask them to like go on walkthroughs with me or, reveals and stuff. And I warn them, I'm like, get ready to hear every single thing that has ever happened in their entire lives. That is, even if it was 20 years ago, if it was paranormally, specific, you're going to hear about it. Yeah. And sure enough, we're out of there in 3.5 hours, and you've had maybe time to ask 3 questions because they will tell you everything that they know, period.
And even normal people will, because they're so relieved that somebody is here listening to them. I can safely tell you my story and know you're not going to think I'm crazy just from the fact that you're here and listening to me.
Yeah.
And once you do that, everything, like I said, everything else is easy after that. Once you break that wall, everything else we do the rest of the night is easy. And it's so amazing how that works. So that's where the social work comes in to play.
The reference Mike just gave, I couldn't help but laugh, because the lady, once we got to the house, the lady only took 4 breaths in 3.5 hours. And it was just supposed to be our initial meet and greet, because we have like a pattern of what we do, right? We do a meet and greet, we walk the property, we listen to the claims, and then before we decide to jump into an investigation. 3.5 hours in, and she was still on a roll, and I'm just like, holy crap. I worked all day. It's like 10:30 at night. I got a 45-minute drive home. I have to
get up at 6 the next morning.
Exactly. Yeah. 5:30. I got to get going, and that was the place where, and this hasn't happened to me in a long time. That was the place where I got jumped by something. And I don't know if it's just, I didn't have my protections up like I normally do. We weren't investigating really, and we walked into the backyard, and one of the claims was the backyard is pitch black and you can't see it out the back windows of the house, even though there's a street light right there that shines down into the backyard. We walked out in the backyard and I heard something come running from across the backyard, running right towards me. That was it. Jumped right at me. Little shit. Took it home for like 3 days. Well, I did. Yeah, well, I took it home for 3 days, and then a friend of ours was over, and we were doing evidence review, and he's like, do you want me to like help you out? And I'm like, I could use some help. I saw it. It was running around the bedroom, just being an ass, and I'm like, whatever. It threw a couple hangers at me, and then it went go in the hallway. And so anyway, our friend Mike came over, and our other friend came over, and he's like, all right, I'll give you, I'll do a little thing and help you out. And I'm like, great, that'd be fantastic. Get it out of here. And regretfully, I think he took it home with him because he had all kinds of stuff happen in his life right after that. Like, and I don't think it was a bad entity. I just think it was
mischievous.
It was mischievous. And it was one of those kind of things where it was like an elemental or a Native American type of entity, because this was a Native American case.
Yeah, it's always our fault. So
No, absolutely not. No. But they, they had some things happen. Her dad was a really powerful medicine man in their tribe, and he was big on mirrors. And he's like, get these mirrors out of the house, And we went back there. They had this gigantic mirror in the bedroom. And I'm like, why do you guys have a mirror in the bedroom after your dad just told you to get rid of all the mirrors in the house? You know,
I have a thing about if I'm at a place, the blinds have to be closed, especially if my back's going to be to them. It's just always something I've had because there's always something out there. But
like watching you mean?
Yeah.
And then so what does that do to you? Does that distract you from what you're trying to accomplish inside?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
we went to one house where it just killed me because they had no blinds in the whole house. I'm like, oh, I would not be able to live here.
No.
I'm like, you guys need to buy some blinds. I'm like, that'll fix all your problems.
Walmart, $25 investment. You could do the
Now,
whole
whether
house.
it was true or not, it's another story, but it would
Right.
have made me feel better.
Right.
Exactly. So Dave brings up a good point. And I don't have a lot of opportunity to speak with somebody of, your gifts in that can actually see, talk, whether verbally or telepathically with spirits. How do you keep from being followed home? I mean, obviously, like if there's a spirit who hasn't been talked to for years, and especially if they're trying to reach out for help or they want somebody to talk to, obviously this has happened before. How do you keep from, how do you protect yourself from getting an attachment or having them follow you home for more conversation because you're the one person they can actually communicate with?
You set boundaries, just like you do with a 2-year-old. You set firm, specific boundaries. You stick to them. And when you're done, you're done. What helps is we do the prelim interview at a different time. Unless it's a rare occasion, sometimes it'll be combined, but usually we do it separately. And that's where the people can talk, get everything out of their system. That's their time to go off on a tangent. And we use as to set up the investigation to the correct time and everything so that it's the optimal time to help them. It also lets me know whether when I'm screening an area, is there something there that is outside of our league? Meaning, does this have a demonic presence that we need to take and send to a church instead of us helping? Very rare. We have run into them. Dave didn't screen well enough. Thanks a lot.
Uh-oh, Dave.
Didn't bother me.
You're not the one that got picked up and thrown against the wall.
We'll get to that.
Point, Dave.
We'll get to that in a minute. Don't worry.
You failed.
That's a valid point, Dave. Yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
After we talk about this, you guys will totally understand why it was not my fault.
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay.
Totally not my fault. So what do you do, Ann, to keep them from following you home and constantly talking to you?
You set boundaries. You have that conversation when you're there at the residence. You let them know when you're going to come back to the spirit, just like you do the family. They can hear you too. And the only rule is that you have to stay here. You may not follow us home. And there's been times where we've pulled over the car when somebody tries to break that rule, and we make it very clear. And sometimes it involves a blessing and Uncle Dan helping us out to make sure that the balance is maintained. When we were learning, we didn't pay attention to making sure that intent was clear. Anybody here stays here. Since we understood the dangers of letting things follow us home, after an incident where somebody brought somebody home, Dave.
It wasn't my fault. I'm just very lovable.
Anyway.
It's not his fault. He's such a delight.
That's right. I can't help it. Okay.
Charming personality.
Thank you.
I read that right from the get-go.
Thank you. You understand.
I do.
He was dealing with cancer treatment, and he was also dealt with getting a lot of critter attachments when he was going through his treatment. And so I saw a high influx of those guys, and they were clinging to his back, and I'd have to constantly remove them because at that point he wasn't able to protect himself. His guard, his everything was drained. And the same thing can happen with anybody when they're going through those types of chemotherapy, end of life things. They're more vulnerable to nasty attachments. And that's displayed by their personality changes. It's not always a chemo. It's something that's sucking the life right out of them, and it drains them. beyond what that chemotherapy or radiation does. So, little side rail there.
She does that a few times. Yeah.
My bad.
Well, let's get into the story. It's 8:50, so we got 10
Okay.
minutes left. I want to hear the story.
So we had it prelim, and it was a bunch of college kids living at the house. So, automatically first thought is, okay, drinking, drugs.
Right. Yep.
And I did the prelim, and the things they were describing, it's like, okay, yeah. Cold glasses of milk are being poured and left around for no reason. The main couple that lived in the house, there was this dark cloud that came down in front of their face one night when they were sleeping, and they saw red eyes.
The smell?
The
Meat locker
nasty smell. Just a lot of little things like that were happening. But it was affecting the women. So the men that were living didn't notice really anything. So, all right, I do the prelim. Typically, when we do prelims, we don't bring the sensitive along. They don't get any information at all until they do their walkthrough. They still have nothing until they've finished their walkthrough initially of the location. So they have none of this information ahead of time. And at the time, of course, we're still learning. I didn't think much of it. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a bunch of college kids. Yeah, okay, you're seeing dark clouds, So we're not really sure. So we still investigate. Night we show up. Again, it's still not even affecting the males that are there, even the male investigators. So Anne decided to do some things that you just don't do by yourself. You don't go in the attic by yourself. You don't go off by yourself. Of course, she broke all those rules. And you don't challenge the thing that's there. So you do.
I'm with you, Anne. I've done it.
But
it's happened. I
do
don't.
you
I'm
still
not proud
do
of
it?
No.
There you go. So you learned.
No. Right.
She learned a good lesson too.
I didn't learn from fear though. It didn't scare me. What happened did not scare me. So it wasn't a fear thing. It was more of I need to take a more educated approach to this.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And
it tried to scare me, but it didn't succeed.
Well, we were in a room and we had cameras set up. It was probably 6 of us, and Anne she just wasn't herself. And when you see it happen on TV, you look at somebody being picked up and thrown into the wall, and you go, "That looks really hokey."
Yeah.
Until you actually are there and see it happen, you're like, "Whoa."
The mistake I made is I said its name out loud. That's what caused it to lift me up and throw me against the wall. Right after I was asked, "Do you know its name?" I blurted it out before I was told not to say it. I still know its name, but I will not say it.
I'm assuming a demonic name.
I had never seen anything like that. I knew I could see them. I knew they were different, but this one I saw in such great detail that I was intrigued and too curious. I was looking at something that was a high-level demon and had been there since before California was California, in that same spot. And I saw how it lived in this church, how the area was. I saw everything in those moments. I was locked in with its whole history, and that's what I remember is after I was thrown, I was craving salt. I wanted to eat salt. I had a bruise on my chest from where it had thrown me, and I didn't remember being lifted up. I had a good long call with John Safis there afterwards, and I learned a lot from him as far as, what to do and what not to do. So I really appreciate John on a whole nother level. Even though it was one short call many years ago, forever in my heart, he has a spot because of how he helped me deal with that. And I never had issues following it because he told me what to do and what not to do going forward.
And this was something she had seen because somebody we knew lived around the corner from where eventually we investigated. This was a year prior. She'd actually seen it out in the street when we were going to go visit our friend. And black hat?
No. Old man that he formed. That's what he would be outside. I've seen him more than once on that always walking towards the house we investigated. This crotchety old man, like you'd see out of a Bible story, dressed in just shreds of clothes and nondescript, long, grayish white hair. But when I saw it up in the attic, it was not anything like that man. I knew it was the same. I knew it wasn't it, and it never was human. Of course, the particular horns and goat feet definitely gave it away.
That'll do it.
It was real. It was very much there. The heat I felt from it was so intense. It wasn't an attic type of heat. And then when I challenged it and to try and back and create a space for that family, that's when, I was out of my league. You don't just challenge something like that. It definitely lets you know who's stronger, and it is stronger.
Do you think it was affecting the whole block, or was it just targeted on that one family?
Just
And
the
the
house.
reason I ask that is because you saw it outside multiple times. So it wanted you to see it.
Yeah.
Right? Because any demonic entity that you see, at least from the two I have seen in my life, they want if they don't want to be seen, you're never going to see them.
Right.
But if they want you to see them, you're going to see them.
That's what made a point of it.
Right,
This
exactly.
one-
And the one that
Yep.
the one that sticks in the forefront of my mind that I can see every time I close my eyes wanted to make a point of letting me know that I wasn't welcome and that the family was its play toy. And
Well-
that's what it came across telepathically and said was their mind, why in the effort
Mind.
you here.
And this was the only
It was an
time
ownership thing.
the only time I've ever had to tell someone you had to move. In all the time I've been doing this, the only time I've ever told them, you guys need to move out of this place. What is here is not leaving. It doesn't care. And it's going to keep doing what it wants to do. And there was another young kid who was hunched over. He couldn't stand up straight. I grabbed his pain, pulled it out of him, and he stood right up and was able to walk normally.
At this same house that was having the demonic issues.
Yeah. Something I can do. I can take pain and get rid of it.
It had caused that pain, and it was thriving on that agony. It was.
He was hunched over so bad. He literally could not stand up. And as soon as I took it out, he stood upright and he was jumping around the room.
So I think that based on your story and the fact that Anne has not disagreed with a single thing, Dave, I think you're off the hook. I don't think it's your fault.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wait. We need another jury over here.
Oh.
Wait.
Oh.
Survey said?
Survey says, I think you're off the hook too.
Thank you.
Sorry,
That's
Ann.
why we develop new protocols. You do not go in the attic. You do not go off by yourself. You do not challenge it. We have a whole list of things now because of her.
Yep. Because of her.
We
But
call
you
it
know
the
what?
Ann rule.
But you're safe, right? You lived through it. You're safe. You're healthy. You're fine, emotionally, mentally. So, Dave, that's not. So, I would consider that a victory, right? It was a learning experience, and even though sometimes learning experiences suck, you came out of it okay on the other side, as did I. And you just chalk it up to I ran into somebody who was a little bit tougher than me. Right. And sometimes we need to understand when we need to ask for help.
Yeah.
And
Let's
that's
just say-
really what I walked away from it with was I needed to ask for help and I didn't. And it
Let's
was
just say Ann of today is so much better than Ann of 10, 15 years ago. That Ann was way too curious about everything. Like the mountain lions that are coming down from the hills and she's out there, talking to them. And, it's like, no, you just have to know your limits. And she's come so far. And that's what's good to see too on this whole thing.
Why do you think the ghost lion scared the crap out of me when it jumped up on the horse stall? Who has ghost lions on their property? Come on. Lions on their property.
We didn't tell her that the home we had gone to, they used to keep exotic pets out back. So there's all these empty stalls, and she was wandering the property and
scared the piss out of me. I couldn't tell that it was a ghost.
Did you just think like the Bengal tiger from hell just showed up and was ready?
I'm thinking the
tear you
mountain
apart?
lion found its buddy, and it's gonna come and eat me for real this time.
you saw a bear. What else did you see?
A
there?
pig, potbelly pig.
Oh yeah, potbelly pig.
Then there was a bobcat in the chimney and a boa constrictor on the floor upstairs, all of which not living anymore.
Well, the pot-bellied pig, I wouldn't necessarily be running from.
It was
or
big.
the boa constrictor.
Oh, it was big though. That thing, I would have eaten you.
That was a state fair pig.
And the house was like
700
decked out
pounder.
in late 60s, early 70s. It still had the tall orange shag carpeting.
Yep.
Oh,
the,
nice.
The record player wallpaper. I mean,
Nice.
it was awesome. That house.
Avocado green appliances.
Yes.
Bingo.
Yes. Yep.
We were sad when they tore it down and they built another facility there, but it was an awesome home.
They actually built a facility to care for substance abuse there, which is really good because the kid that had passed in the late 70s died of a drunk driving accident at the corner, and he would not even pass over. He was still there very much. So the fact that they put a substance abuse center on that property, I can't tell you how relieved I am that they didn't put apartments, because I knew we would get called back for apartments, but a substance abuse center was the perfect fit for somebody who I know is still there at that same intersection to this day.
All right, so we are out of time. So here's what I want from you to close us out. Do you have any advice for parents with kids who may or may not, have to deal with the paranormal, whether it's gifts or whether it's just maybe their house is haunted? And if parents have any questions or they want to contact you for advice or those, how do they do so?
They would contact us through benderparanormal.com. We have a contact page and just list your information and what it is you're needing. Best time to reach you, what means to reach you. And as a parent, please listen to your kids. Don't judge them. Don't anything. Just listen. Be a sounding board. Be there for them. And sometimes it just means holding them and giving them a hug without words. Just be there for them.
I agree.
Dave, do you have anything to add?
I would echo that. I think definitely listen to them and just let them feel safe enough to express what they're experiencing, because they'll be able to feel safe enough to be able to express what it is that's going on with them and know that it's okay to be able to do so.
That's fair.
That's our daughter in the background.
She peeked her head around a couple times. I was going to be like, "Ghost child."
You saw that?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
She's not really there.
I usually don't see them, so I'm impressed.
You're like, wow, it's so clear.
I say, wow, there's a lot of detail going on there. Yeah.
But you feel them. You feel them, David. You know when they're there. You feel sick to your stomach at times.
Yep.
I have some tricks I can give you to help you with that. To help ground yourself better, to minimize that discomfort you feel sometimes, because it's crippling to you. It's so intense.
At times it is. Yeah.
So catch me later on the flip side. I can help you out with some of that.
Okay.
And obviously, Anne, you've picked up on the fact that I'm as sensitive as a brick.
Pretty much. I love people around you. I love having people around. That's awesome.
But you know what? If you had a headache, I could take it away from you like that, whereas he would be a lot harder.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you know what? I had a bad accident a couple of years ago that damaged my spine and my back, and I have to deal with pain all the time. So if you can remove pain, I might reach out to you and see if you can help me.
By all means, we can give it a shot.
Yeah.
I got a few things I can do.
Okay.
You can have a medicine bag if you were to ask too.
Yeah. So,
Dave, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
It's been amazing. I'm so glad that you were able to do so on such short notice. Honestly, I would like to have you guys back because I think that the conversation can go 100 different ways.
Anytime you guys want to talk, just let us know.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. So again, benderparanormal.com if you want to reach out to Ann and Dave for any sort of issues that you may have. But that does it for us. We'll be back next week with another brand new episode. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe. We want to see you back here.